Hey, what's going on everyone? Justin here, and in this video we're going to talk about the 7 books that I finished in the month of September. Apparently I'm just trying to be a completionist. I was going to do my October one, and I realized my last one was August. So anyways, we're here. Let's just get right into it. So first up, we did The Philosophy of Science, a very short introduction. And this one is by Samir Okasha. And I really enjoy these Oxford very short introductions. I have like a whole slew of them. I am going to do a video at some point here. Kind of going over like some of like the ones I really enjoyed and like kind of just like my collection and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think I actually need to do something of a reread of this one, because after I read this one, the following month in October, I started to read Karl Popper's The Logic of Scientific Discovery, which is part of, the philosophy of science for the 20th century, and got my ass absolutely handed to me. So apparently I didn't pick up enough from the short introduction, I guess. It's been a while since a book just completely clobbers me over the head and that kind of thing. But yeah, so there's that. I thought I really enjoyed it, but apparently I don't know. It might just be Karl Popper. It's just really difficult. I just felt like I wasn't getting quite enough out of it, so we're gonna do some other reading and research beforehand and come back to it at some point in 2025, hopefully. Next up is the classic work of fiction that I read in September, which was Goethe's The Sorrows of Young Werther. So I had 5 books that I wanted to read that were classics in 2024, the second half. It's something I've wanted to do for a while. I just have never really looked at the classics and that kind of thing, and I felt like I was maybe missing out a little bit. Really did enjoy this one. Partially I picked it because it's a little bit shorter. I know Goethe's probably more famous for like Faust and stuff, though at the time of part of the reason I picked this one is at the time of the writing, Werther was actually a little bit more famous. It came out way before like Faust did, but there is like kind of a, I still haven't quite figured out if it's 100% true or not, where Napoleon met Goethe like during his like conquest and stuff, and was like, yeah, so like when you like write the sequel apparently to Werther, which I don't really know how you do a sequel to Werther anyways, this is just the essence of kind of just despair like into like a little short novella. Just condensed in prose here. I really enjoyed it. I not usually a big, granted I can't think of how many epistolary books I've written, which are books that are, written in the form of like letters and that kind of thing. But for his story, for Werther's story, I think it fits actually quite well. I really enjoyed it, and you can just read it over like the course of like a day or two because it's not very long. But yeah, it packs a big punch for like its size. I really enjoyed it. Next up is one that I read and listened to at the same time, and it's David Attenborough's The Life of Birds, which he came out with the audiobook version where he narrates it himself. I think it was either earlier this year or the end of last year. So I was like, I'm just gonna go ahead and like do that. Obviously you got lots of really good photographs and that kind of thing. I think it originally came out in like the 90s. I want to say you still learned quite a bit, though I think it was more of like kind of a relaxing, just kind of like chill read, if that makes any sense, just because you're reading it and like 99% of it is like, I think there's a newer edition, like I think they updated like a lot of his books, but the text is almost completely identical and that kind of thing. But I really enjoyed it, and like I said, just like listening to Attenborough's like narration makes it 100 times better. So that one was just like a lot of fun, just to kind of like chill and relax too. Then for my science reading challenge, this was the first book that I did here, and it's The Canon, a whirligig tour of The Beautiful Basics of Science by Natalie Angier. And this is kind of, it looks like a really quirky pop science book, and there is like a little bit of that kind of like pop culture humor and stuff, but it's actually fairly decent, like heavy hitter as far as like kind of doing like broad overviews of a bunch of different scientific subjects. For example, the first couple chapters, one is dealing with just like measurement, another one is dealing with just like scales in science as far as like scales of measurement, because just the vastness of like going from like, you know, the molecular level, like the distances involved and stuff between like, you know, molecules and atoms and that kind of thing, and then doing like cosmology, you know, the distance between stars and galaxies and the void and all that kind of stuff. So it was actually pretty heavy hitting, and it was a little more dense, maybe not dense, but like I don't know if it was just the margins are smaller or something. I felt like it took me a lot longer to get through than I guess I was expecting for a book like this size. But I did enjoy it. I didn't think like I saw online that a lot of people kind of criticize like the humor and the I don't want to say silliness, because I didn't really find it was like that often. You know, it was only like once every like, I don't know, 10 pages or so there's kind of like a silly like comment and things, and I thought a few of them actually like hit the mark pretty well. But it's just every big chapter is kind of an overview of a big like domain of science. You got physics, chemistry, evolutionary biology, molecular biology, geology, astronomy, calibration, probabilities, things like that. So all kinds of good stuff, and I thought it was just a really good way to kind of kickstart my like science reading challenge, which I guess still going on for the rest of the year. I'll leave a link to the Discord and everything down below. But I got some good plans coming up for 2025 with that for sure. And then let's see, we have When the Ice Is Gone by Paul Bierman, and I was sent this by W.W. Norton and Company, and I actually really enjoyed this one. A lot of it, it's all about kind of the melting of the Greenland ice sheets and glaciers there, which I haven't, like you kind of read it and like, you always read about like ice caps melting and glaciers melting, that kind of thing. But this was like specifically on like just a certain region of the world for the whole book, which I found really interesting. And it was just cool learning about how like ice cores are actually like, you know, how they actually drill for the ice cores, you know, how did they keep them like frozen and everything, and then what did they do with them like once they have them in the lab and keep them frozen, and what are they looking for and that kind of thing, which I thought was really cool. It's always fun like kind of seeing the behind the scenes of the actual like, you know, laboratory experimentation going on. But a big section of the book, in the middle of the book, is actually almost like history driven, kind of dealing with all the different like secret bases and military bases, like the Thule base camp and everything that were formed in Greenland, especially during like the 50s and 60s. You know, how did like people actually like live in these like kind of like under ice like caverns and things. I thought that was just really interesting, so it's something I like kind of vaguely heard about, but then you realize, you know, this was like a giant military base under the ice effectively, and more than just one. So it's just kind of really cool reading about how that logistically how that actually worked. Yeah, pretty crazy stuff going on there. And then for anyone who like enjoys kind of like nitty gritty science, I think this would be good for you to read for sure. Next up is the one I was probably most looking forward to for the second half of the year here, and it's Jamie Sain's Children of the Northern Forest. Wild New England's History from Glaciers to Global Warming. Just look at the cover with the links and everything. And for those who don't know, I live in the middle of the woods in northern Maine, so totally fit the bill for this. It was, okay, I'm going to start by saying it was a great book. Unfortunately, it's just not what I wanted from it based on the subtitle and everything. It really, what it is it's a huge deep dive effectively on land management, especially regarding like timber companies and the logging industry in northern New England. In Maine is like 90% covered in woods. Like Western Maine is basically uninhabited for the most part, and it's all just like owned by like it's privatized like logging corporations and stuff that own the land. But it was just really interesting seeing how different states approached I guess different aspects of, you know, woodland natural resources and forests and everything, how they went about doing it, and pretty much all the mistakes and blunders that most states and most areas kind of did along the way. Of course, you know, Maine's like just generally behind the 8-ball in a lot of things, and yeah, just didn't do a very good job over the course of the 20th century there. So it was really sad to kind of read about, but you kind of agree with it. And like some of the towns and locations and stuff like throughout Maine, I've either like been to or visited, driven through and that kind of thing. Even like one of the timber corporations that's mentioned, I like tangentially like worked for and everything. So it was kind of interesting like seeing it like kind of in focus like that. Like I said, it was still really good, really, I guess, but just really niche, if that makes sense. I was hoping there would be a little bit more on like kind of the ecology aspect of things. like I said, the majority of it is more like on the natural resource management kind of stuff. Like you always get the sense too about like there's like the arguments between the different organizations and conservation groups and stuff that are trying to like conserve it, do land easements, all kinds of different things kind of going on. But like you don't really learn a lot about like the actual, I guess, ecology of like the flora and fauna like actually living there. There's little tidbits here and there, but I just wish there was maybe a chapter or two just kind of fleshing that out completely. But anyway, still, like I said, really good book. Not sure how much it would appeal to pretty much anyone outside New England per se, but I guess that's kind of hit or miss with the topic matter. And then lastly, the biggest book that I read, the longest book by far, was The Gene by Siddhartha Mukherjee. And this was fantastic. I'm not going to downplay it. This is like one of those ones that I didn't read because of all the hype because of the author. He's super famous for this book. Probably the most famous for Emperor of All Maladies, which is kind of like a history of cancer. I think he also was pretty famous for Song of the Cell. But let's just say I'm probably going to try to like read his entire bibliography at this point. So like I said, it was just my mistake for basically expecting this to be like super overly hyped, but just super fantastic. The author does a great job blending just awesome like history storytelling, the history of like how we understood genes, kind of all the different discoveries from, you know, the 1800s through the modern period, like kind of learning about them for the physical structures, but also like how they operated and everything like that, but also like incorporating, like I said, the history and the science, but also his kind of, he has like a family memoir kind of interspersed throughout the book that fits super well with the theme of genetics and everything, that I just found superb. The writing is great. Like I said, just super fantastic. Definitely check it out if you're into anything like, you know, biology or science reading. I think you'll really enjoy it. Just like I said, superb blend, memoir, science and history, kind of like all mixed together into like just a really excellent book for sure. So definitely we'll be checking out which some of the other ones that he's written as well. So there you have it. Those are the 7 books I finished. Definitely like I think my weakest month of the year by far, considering besides The Gene, all of them were pretty short. I want to say like the longest one besides that was like 250 pages or something. So definitely made up. Actually, now that I say it, I don't know if I actually did make up for it in October, because I feel like all those books were short as well. But I will be doing my October wrap up in the near future. But let me know if you can remember off the top of your head, or even like it doesn't have to be off the top of your head. If you can figure out what your favorite book that you read in September was, leave a comment down below so I can check it out as well. And always remember, whatever you end up reading for this month of November, read victoriously.